fire lab there and stuff like that.
Well, I'm actually a fairly recent emigre.
Oh, are you now?
From another state, yeah. Well, from another state into Delaware.
Yeah.
I used to live and spent most of my life up in Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut, gotcha.
Yeah.
Another one of the early ones.
Yeah.
You're a colonist through and through, is what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah. Oh, yeah. That definitely born and raised.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always liked it. And of course, what everybody says, at least out here, what everybody says is if you're going back east, you got to go in the fall. That's when it's beautiful.
Oh yeah. Although it's funny, I had friends from Denver come out to the east when I was working, and they would just marvel, like, it's so green.
Yeah.
It's like you have trees. These are huge. This is so green.
Yeah, that's how you get it. You can only have leaves changing in the fall if you have leaves growing in the spring, huh?
Yeah.
Since that's not something we get much of out here in the West, it's all novel.
Yeah, and it's very lush comparatively. It's very lush here.
Yeah, it does get confusing. I mean, like in my younger days before I had traveled much more, just the eye-opening experience of realizing that there are parts of the world where like plants grow spontaneously. Like if there's dirt and water and seeds will fall there and stuff will grow. Where I'm used to having to toil and coax and haul water to get anything to grow.
Yeah. And of course out there right now, water is a premium product.
Yes, sir. Yep. So if you grew up in Connecticut, like that's a great place to start. Tell me about growing up and when you encountered bagpipes and how that all happened.
Sure. So I'm going to correct you. I actually didn't grow up in Connecticut.
Well, take me even further back then.
Yeah. So I started out as a child, and
you did.
Yes, yeah. And I started I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My parents moved us out of the city when I was like 4 years old to an area just north of New York, about 30 miles, called Rockland County.
Brooklyn's a cool place to be able to say, I'm from Brooklyn. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Brighton Beach, So I'm right in there with Woody Allen and all. But anyway, so I grew up really just north of New York City, and it was a bedroom community for a lot of police and fire and FBI, and people. It was a bedroom community for New York City, and this is like we're going down 1960s, 50s, early 60s, and I was a Boy Scout and part of a Boy Scout troop, and the parents were, as I said, cops, tradesmen, working in the city, and they said, well, we want to do something with these boys, so let's do something special. And they said, well, we can start a drum and bugle corps. Nah, been there, done that.
Not special enough.
No. So a lot of them, 3 of them actually, were part of the New York City Police Pipes and Drums, Emerald Society Pipes and Drums. And they said, well, why don't we start a Boy Scout bagpipe band, because that's unique. It's never been done before. Well, to that point, it hadn't been done before.
Yeah.
And so they said, great idea. So they started putting up lists, and they said, okay, boys, sign up. Who wants to be a drummer? Who wants to be a piper? I went, piper? What the hell is that?
Yeah.
So I went, drummer. Drummer's cool.
Yeah.
And out of a troop of about 60 kids, they had way too many drummers and not enough pipers. So they took every other name. True story. They took every other name and switched it to the other list.
Did they really?
The first lottery ever lost.
And look at you now.
And look at me now. So, but that's true. And but as a little nerdy kid in the mid '60s, it wasn't bigger than the other guys. Didn't have all the skills, and so this was cool, and I got good at it quickly.
Yeah.
So that kind of became my reason for continuing on, actually. But we had this bagpipe band, Boy Scout bagpipe band, from like 1966 to 1968, 9, when we started graduating high school. Mm-hmm. And
sounds like it was kind of a bigger group too. Sounds like you got a lot of kids signed up.
We had about at our height about 14 boys.
That's enough people to make a lot of noise.
Yeah, and then we expanded. Actually, we're one of the first co-ed organizations in the Boy Scouts. We had a color guard of mixed co-ed color guard.
It's kind of embarrassing to say as a member of the bagpiping community, but you were, in that case, one of the earlier groups that was also letting girls into the pipe band too.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's,
oh yeah.
it's
Actually, my
shocking
sister.
how long it took us to realize girls could play bagpipes.
Yeah, well, and so to that point, my my original instructor, a guy named Al Bosworth, out of Teaneck, New Jersey, he he would come up and teach us, and then as his business got busier, he had to cut back a little bit. So he turned us over to a lady by the name of Lillian Lipchuk. So again, she was actually Ukrainian in her background, and just developed a love of pipes. As did Al. Al was Jewish, and he actually learned pipes from a gentleman in New York City, but it was an old Scot. He didn't want to teach him. Didn't
Mm,
want to teach him. So it's like, oh, you don't have it. It's in the blood. You don't have it. You don't have it.
mm-hmm.
And he wound up camping out on his doorstep in apartment buildings in the Upper East Side of New York, Upper West Side
Determined.
of New York, and eventually Murdo Buchanan gave in and started teaching my instructor to play.
Mm.
But then he turned us over to this lady, Lillian Lipchuk, who took our band forward, in its later years. Like this is like 67, 68. So yeah, we were ahead of all the curves.
Yeah, yeah. It's like all of the silly prejudices and like the what do you call it when like a group is insular? I'm trying to think of the, I guess just insularity. Like all those walls were already being broken down for you, huh?
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
actually, and experienced it directly because I think the first time I went to compete, which was here, there at that time there was like A division, B division, so I was
Mm-hmm.
in the B division. There was I won't say his name, but there was a judge, an older guy, and he it was my first time, so I'm nervous. You're a kid, you're what, 15 at that point,
Mm-hmm. Naturally,
and
a very nerve-wracking situation playing in
yeah,
front of a
yeah.
judge and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So you signed up in those days. You signed up on the field, and you put your name in front of him. And he goes, "So what's your name?" I said, "It's Bruce Lazaroff." He goes, "Lazaroff? What kind of name is that?" I'm like, "I'm so screwed here."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You wanted to check your pedigree before you could even play.
Well, yeah. He goes, "Well, lad, yeah, let's see what you can do. Play, do what you can." And I was like already shaken. It's like, so
Yeah.
it's like Lazaroff. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, okay, well, fine." So I played, and I did okay. I got through my tune.
Great way to
And
start a kid off, though. Just be like, oh darn. Well,
yeah, well, you're not of the blood. Got
yeah.
it. Okay. So, but I don't know. I had some real. I got really upset because we were there for the day for the band and everything, and at the end of the day, like I said, I don't know what possessed me. I actually re-registered.
Oh, like to play again?
Yeah, but
Oh,
I registered this time as Ian Bruce. And I'm telling you,
did
he was.
you?
Yeah, I used my middle name first and my first name second.
Sounds pretty darn Scottish, Ian Bruce.
What can I say? If you want vanilla, I'll give you vanilla. You know. So yeah, I played again and actually scored better.
Look at that.
So it's like I at that point I didn't compete again for about I think 6 years or something. I was so disgusted.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting now. I want to keep hearing the story, so I don't mean to hop around too much, but of course, part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is about your E-Belleaire, your E-Bellow. Which one do you call it right now? Has it changed or is it both?
No. So the company is E-Bellow, E-Bellow LLC. We needed to create a something around the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
The product is the EBelaire.
Ah, gotcha.
The EBelaire. And that's basically electric bellows for air, air. So,
It just
and
the reason I wanted to hop to the product for a moment. I do want to come back to your story. It's just that I wonder to what degree your early experience in precisely what you just described might have saved you from getting trapped in the insular thinking yourself. That like I think we're all aware of it. It's kind of a silly thing that in piping, and I think it's partly because of the military history that the competitive form of the instrument playing has and stuff like that. Like there's a really strong sense of there's only one right way to do it, and it's always been this way, and if you don't do it this way, it's wrong. I'm sure that you've met some resistance of people saying that's not how you play bagpipes. This newfangled thing. Um, Without regard as to like how this helps people get into piping, helps people who couldn't pipe otherwise pipe, that kind of stuff. Um, what do you think? Do you think that if you had been if your last name had been McIntosh and you'd just been like part of the in crowd from the beginning, your mind wouldn't have even been open to the possibility of creating something like the EBelaire?
Well, so my early history and the creation of the EBelaire are unfortunately not connected. I don't know. I don't think they're connected in any particular way, other than it's more like who I am, just as where I've developed as a problem solver over the
Mm-hmm.
years, and how I perceive need. Um, because kind of again skipping around a bit, my my whole life has been basically a generalist. I mean,
Mm.
it's all interesting. Kind of sums me up, um, and in that level of curiosity kind of extends from everything from tinkering with electric circuits to carpentry to to the music, but it's been effectively, and I hate to say this, but I I'm truly that old tinker guy, and that's a terrible term, I guess. But master of jack of all trades, master of none.
Uh-huh. Yep.
True masters. Like I'm always in awe of people who just like get into it and they just single-mindedly go for that. I can't sustain that. I just can't. So I'll get good enough to the point where it's like, look, that's fun, and then I move on to something else. Um,
I'm grinning ear to ear, Bruce, because I can't tell you how many times I've been told in my life that I need to settle down and focus on something. That
that's
that
the
that
hell.
that jack of all trades has been used on me by teachers since I
Yep.
was a little kid, and it gets frustrating. Eventually, you start going like, you know what, guys, screw you, I'm gonna do what I want, and so it's just lovely to hear somebody else saying like it's okay to be that way.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm now. So I mean, I've gone through my career. I've been 45 years in IT, and so here's the Reader's Digest version.
Hmm.
I When I went to college, I originally went at the intent of becoming a medical doctor, but the first couple of years of school were not good. I discovered, well, it was the 70s and the 60s, so late 60s, 70s. So you know what was going on then. So I discovered a lot of things
Mm.
all at once.
Yeah.
And so nearly wrecked my GPA in short order and spent the rest of my college career trying to rebuild that.
But we might say like you discovered other things, right?
Yeah,
It was
life,
definitely a learning experience.
truly, life, truth, beauty, and the struggle.
Yeah.
That's so. But anyway, when I came out, I went to graduate school, had degrees in biology, and in the 70s, there was no work. So I went into teaching. I went from teaching, discovered that that was when the computers were first starting to come into desktop form,
Mm.
and I started a lab in the school because I saw the need. Um, Parlayed that skill into a job in the commercial sector, and have basically from that point in on, which was 1980, did 45 years of parlaying, um, parlaying my skills of problem solving and the ability to pick up new things, learn, and integrate them into a career, which
Mm.
just recently, well, I won't say ended, but that part of that my career ended um, a couple of years ago, where I was considered what they call an enterprise architect at a major health insurance company.
Mm.
So you know, one thing leads to another, leads to another. You just sort of need to be open to it,
Yeah.
and not worry the details, because strangely, every one of those stupid little steps along the way contributed to not only the creation of the EBelaire, but other things that I wound up being involved in terms of patentable
Mm.
software, etc.
You can't see where it's all going to come together 20 years before it comes together, but then it does come together, huh?
It's a journey. Somebody gave me the best information, the best advice I'd ever gotten, which was that your career is made of all the jobs you've held over your work lifetime. That's your career, you know. And the other piece of advice was security in this world is only as good as your ability to get another job.
That rings true. So,
So
so then, Bruce, maybe take me back again then, and carry me through those years and how bagpiping was or wasn't present as well.
sure. So after well, high school,
Yeah.
I went to Fordham. I joined New York City Transit Police with my instructor. He was teaching them then, so that was kind of my going to school, playing bagpipes. Just and again, it was pretty casual. Just as I was in that band. After I got out of college, I basically took a hiatus to raise a family and moved from New Jersey to Connecticut. And then about 1988, got the bug to play again.
Had you like been to a parade and heard some and thought, oh, I want to do that, or did it just kind of come out of you naturally?
It was just I've had my pipes; they were crisping nicely in the box, and I just missed it. You know,
Yeah.
I just missed it. I kind of, you identify yourself as certain things, and I always identified myself as a piper.
Yeah.
Well, piper, but I hadn't played, and there were a couple of opportunities where I did play, and it was it was sufficient at best.
Sufficient at best. You got noise out of them, huh?
Yeah, it got done, but it was embarrassing because I knew I could do better, and I wanted to do better. So I joined the Manchester Pipe Band up in Manchester, Connecticut, and they were under the direction of an incredible guy, Chuck Murdoch, and he was great. He said, "Well, Bruce, I think we can do something with you. Let's get started." Turned out, I mean, everything was wrong. I did everything backwards. It was just that was the tutelage I got. My instructor, who I thought was like the bee's knees, he just didn't have it all right either. But I don't fault him. It's just that
he at least was getting something done, right? He was at least planting seeds.
Yeah. So where's beat placement and grace notes, how they're truly played. By the way, did you really know that the beat falls on the E grace note of the Turlua? It's like, God, yeah. So there was a lot to relearn, but I eventually got myself into shape enough to play with them in a grade 2 competition, and I was having a ball. But then life again intervened, so I had to kind of drop back a bit. So I've been in and out for years in like a lot of local bands. There was Manchester Regional Police and Fire, which was another band in Manchester, Connecticut, which is an interesting town because it had 4 pipe bands at one time. This
4 in one town, man. That's
well, if you have the Manchester Pipe Band, which is one of the oldest bands in the country, and then they have people inside who are part of the British American Club and then part of the Irish American Club, and then you have the service bands, you wind up with people with, and that's another aspect of piping. There's this whole social thing, and that's a two-edged sword. So there were rifts that occurred and people split off. So you had the British American Club guys forming the Stuart Highlanders, which eventually became the Manchester Regional Police. And you had the Irish guys.
That seems only too fitting.
Yes, became St. Patrick's because, I mean, the Manchester Pipe Band practice in the Orange Hall, really.
Really?
So
wow, that's it's almost like somebody planned it. It's so precisely perfect.
Yeah, it just but you can't, like I said, you can't make this stuff up. But when you look at it historically, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because from our perspective today, it's like, you guys really got upset about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've been pretty much in, I will say, a mixture of competitive and more than street bands, but performance groups, and the Manchester Regional Police under their leadership was able to get us an invite to the Basel Tattoo back in 2011, and in 2009 to Fulda, and again to St. Gallen's. So they were doing tattoos,
Mm.
and those performances and those performances and those trips. I mean, they were just magic. They were totally formative.
So much fun, right?
Oh my God, best fun you could have with your
Yeah.
clothes on for 2 weeks. So anyway, as part of my experience with people in Connecticut, made some really, really good friendships over the years. And one of these was with a gentleman named and his brother, David and Ian Rankin. And that's really where the story of the EBelaire kind of comes from.
Mm.
Because David's was diagnosed with throat cancer back in 2010, and it necessitated the removal of his larynx to get a cure, to effect a cure.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that just obviously just ends your bagpiping career right there.
Right, and like you mentioned, for a lot of us, like you become, it's so much a part of you, right? And so I could imagine that would have been really hard for him.
And to kind of focus just a little more on that, his father emigrated from Scotland as a piper, played in the regiments for years, came over as a piper. He's taught his two boys to be pipers. They just went through their whole lives with piping as a showpiece, as a centerpiece to their lives and their connections to one another.
So this is a lot of things for him. It's probably memories of his father at this point, and connection to the family, and all that kind of stuff.
But his whole psychology was shocked. I mean, he became very depressed, and,
understandably.
And there's only so much that electronic bagpipe devices, even small pipes, can substitute for what you were used to doing. I mean, he loves small pipes. He plays small pipes, but you don't parade with a small pipe.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go. You don't do a lot of the things you do socially with a small pipe that you do with the full.
Right. So much of what you can do with the small pipes is more by yourself in your kitchen, not
correct.
Not that it has to be that way, but that's the way it is. It's
yeah. So
you've introduced a new anxiety for me too, Bruce. I'm used to being terrified of losing my fingers. Now I'm terrified of having something go wrong with my lungs and throat too. I hadn't even thought of these things. Now I've got a whole new set of nightmares to have.
Hey, anything I can do to help.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I never introduce a problem I don't have a solution to. So
there we go.
So anyway, so I'm in the hospital with his wife. He's recovering from the surgery, and the two of us are crying.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, "Look, Liz, I don't know when, but there's got to be a way to get David back up and playing pipes again."
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where the story lay, because I was still working. You only have so much bandwidth in a day. I can't believe it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock wherever you are. And
you can have more bandwidth if you force it.
Yeah. And we all did. But you're sitting there now saying, I put what I can to this thing. So the development and the thinking, if you will, the thought experiments that led to a solution really started back in 2010. And it was only, let's see. I mean, I was going down some really fun things like, how about heel-mounted pumps? Okay.
And then, like, as you walk, that's what gets them going.
Exactly.
Right. No, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Let's see. The other one was aqua tanks.
The other one was what?
It was like scuba tanks on a trolley dragged behind you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let's
hook
see.
it to your back belt loop or something, so it'll just go along with you.
Yeah, yeah, and then yeah, there was some definite things about how do you control the air and how do you manage it and all that.
Yeah.
Um, so over the but it led to, you know, again, I'm an ex-IT guy, so it led to specifications, things that this solution needed to certainly have. One of them
Yeah.
was it needed to be light and portable. It needed to be able to support a normal start, two, three-piece rolls. Um, it needed to be able to sustain sustain the pipes for a reasonable amount of time, so you could play a parade or a performance.
Hmm.
Um, and it needed to be it needed to be powerful enough to be able to manage decent tone out of the instrument.
Yeah.
So that kind of led to a couple of things. About 4 years ago, no, it wasn't that long, 22, so about 3 years ago, I found this crazy ad for a kayak inflator,
Hmm.
and I bought it because
There you go.
it could put up to 20 pounds pressure, and I'm like, well, I know I don't need 20 pounds pressure, but
Oh,
let's see
that
what we
makes
can.
sense. An inflated kayak, you do need to be filled pretty darn tight. So
Yeah,
makes
but
sense. That would be yeah.
yeah, so it needed to have pressure, but it also needed to have enough volume to be able to play the to run the pipes. And so I did some quick studies and figured out how that a bagpipe really only needed about zero point 0.8 psi, zero point 0.9 psi to operate, and so that wasn't so big a deal. But
You
you know,
know,
it needed to move air.
Bruce, that actually kind of deflates my ego a bit. I would have liked to think that what we were doing was harder than that. That's less psi than I would have boasted. You know,
Yeah, yeah, but it's still a challenge
it's
to
still
get
something, right?
to get a device to generate that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
And the one other criteria I didn't mention was it can't sound like a jet engine,
Ah, of course. Yeah. You don't
you
want to have
know,
like your fourth drone going, right?
it really had to be quiet enough to be able to not detract from the sound of the instrument.
Yeah.
Um, so there, so there were. I did a lot of kind of looking around, and some of these devices were close. And I actually developed my first model of this thing using one of those inflators. Basically, I hijacked the whole thing and you know rewired the sneakers off of it,
Hmm.
and submitted. But it got me to the point where I figured out the control mechanism, that it would function. It was more of an advanced prototype than a real production model.
Yeah.
So and that led me to realizing what I needed to find, and I was able to find manufacturers of the components that basically led to the device I have going today.
And while you were kind of thinking through things and even trying stuff out, were you updating your friend, or was this more going on in your head and you weren't gonna bring him, weren't gonna bring him anything until you knew it worked, kind of?
Is the second. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had the first, what I called the Model 1, was really the first, like I said, advanced prototype that was fully functional.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem I had was the air control wasn't really robust. It was adequate, and amount of pressure it could generate was like right at the tipping point of the reeds. You know,
Mm.
so
The lower tipping point.
yeah,
I got you. Yeah.
it was like it had to be a full battery. It had to be
Mm.
right there. You had to be playing a really comfortable reed, and there was just no playroom.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And so it was just too much at the edge. So I went back to the drawing boards, found some other materials, and actually found better pumps, better pump motor, better control systems, denser batteries, and so the new one has a full variable control of the air pressure from 0 to a max of about 35 inches of water,
Mm.
which is I'm telling you, I don't play blowing. I don't play a reed much harder than 30,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was fine. That had a little bit of a little top end room for you.
Mm-hmm.
It also is fully variable, like I said, so you can adjust it minutely as needed because everybody's instrument's different, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the final thing was it was portable. It all weighed in at about 4 pounds.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been really impressive to me. Is just like looking at the models of it and stuff is just it's remarkably small. And 4.5 pounds, especially hanging on a strap over your shoulder, that's not painful.
No, no, that was worked out really, really well, and that was, of course, a bit of a journey as well because um, I actually had to teach him. I listened to your interview with David Stanley. Not that
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm happy to plug his stuff because he and I talked actually offline. I called him up based on your interview, and it's because I had to teach myself 3D printing
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
because as I said, I knew what my design was. I knew how I wanted this to look, and I could not find an enclosure for the components.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, 3D printing to the rescue.
oh man, I'm a believer. I mean, it took a while certainly to teach myself it, but again, that goes back to like, so I'm pre-adapted to do that stuff because that's what I've done my whole career,
Right.
and it was just a matter of like, okay, sit down. I am a total believer in YouTube.
Oh yeah, University of YouTube. That's right.
Oh my God, YouTube forever.
You want to know a funny story just about like just what it's like to watch the times change? My oldest son, he was probably like 10 years old when we bought our first paper printer. We would just use like the local print shop when we needed on the odd occasion when we needed to print something on paper, but we had a 3D printer in the house since he was like, oh, let me quick maths. I'm not sure exactly, but probably like 3 or 4. And the word printer or to print things, it became clear to us when he heard people talking about it, if it came up in conversation and stuff, his assumption was 3D printing. And the paper printer that we bought was such a novelty to him. He thought it was the coolest and craziest thing that you could just like print a coloring page. It was blowing his mind. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
He didn't know any different. His world was printing means prototyping or like I'd print him little toys and stuff like that. That's what printing meant to him. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, yeah, and you're talking to a guy who basically started off with a television where the screen was like 6 inches across.
Is this weird or what? Right?
Yeah.
This is the same kid that, like, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, right? But like when we went to my parents' house and he held it when he was a little baby and we handed him a cordless phone just for fun because he was like just a little baby wanted to play with something. Cordless phone. It was one of these that had like a ton of buttons on it and then it's a small like caller ID readout at the top. He takes his little baby finger and starts poking at the caller ID readout at the top. Because, of course, he only knew touch screens. He didn't know physical buttons. He didn't know those would do anything, so he had no interest in them.
Oh, God. You've
that
seen
weird?
that? Have you seen that YouTube where they gave these kids a rotary dial phone? They're teenagers.
No, I can just about imagine it, though.
Oh, it's hilarious. If you can find it, I recommend you find it. It is like along the same lines.
Yeah.
It is absolute. They said, please dial this number.
Yeah. They start poking at it. Hello, friends. Just a quick note to make you aware, this podcast is something that I love doing, and I will keep doing it no matter what. But if you want to send me money, I won't say a nay. The easiest way to do that is through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. We do regular drawings for bagpipey albums, books, sheet music, and more, including Droning On swag. All patrons are in the figurative hat from whence the names of winners are drawn, and there are other benefits to members as well. They're all listed there at patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. And speaking of swag, another way to support the show is to buy cool stuff from my little online shop, bagpipeswag.com. There you can find Droning On stuff as well as other pipey and drummy things that my friends and I make. And if you feel so inclined, I genuinely invite you to follow the show on Facebook. It's super fun to have a way to interact over there, to discuss past episodes, and I also like to bounce ideas off of you, my friends, ask you for input on upcoming interviews, that kind of stuff. I'd like to invite you to join in on virtual book clubs and probably lots of other cool stuff that I just haven't even thought of yet as of this recording. It's easy to find. Just get on Facebook and search Droning On Podcast. And if Instagram is more your jam, we're also on there at droning.on.podcast. You can also email the show at TheDroningOnPodcast@gmail.com. And links to these sites, social media accounts, and more are in the show notes. Leaving the show a positive rating and review helps others to find it, so feel free to do that. And thank you again for listening, you cool human you.
Yeah. So anyway,
so you learned 3D printing, because right on, man.
Yeah, so I learned 3D printing, and I'm still doing that. Matter of fact, because there's still improvements I want to make on it. So
yeah.
So the EBelaire actually today consists of like 3 parts. It's the pump, which has the electronics for the remote operation, the wireless receiver, and the speed controls for the motor and the motor itself and the battery. So that's all compacted into the box.
I didn't realize it was wireless. Looking at the model where it's got the air hose, to go from the pump into the blow stock, I assumed that you'd run wires through that as well.
Nah, this is 21st century, man.
That's right. Yeah, I gotta catch up even in my thinking here.
That's 50s thinking, 1950s thinking.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah, so it is wireless, and the wireless control head, if you will, is what looks like a blow pipe, and that attaches to the hose, which of course goes into the blow pipe stock, and so that becomes a fairly integrated unit that at least mimics the appearance of a normal blow stick,
and the experience for the piper, where they do the puff of air to start it. That's I like that. That's rather than hitting the button or flipping a switch, it just feels so natural.
Yeah, exactly. And that was another thing. It had to operate like a regular bagpipe. So you can effectively start and stop your pipes under a 3-pace roll.
Right.
Command.
You got to have your strike-ins and your clean cutoffs.
Yeah, and so it behaves really, really well and very predictably. And the batteries are replaceable. I'm using I'm using Milwaukee style lithium batteries, and they just simply pop out, plug another one in, and you're off and going again. So
that was one thing too I thought was so delightful. Just as I was looking at the pictures of it and like trying to imagine using it, like initially I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like it's handy because it's a battery form that is like has been being manufactured for a while, so it's readily available. So like it makes sense for those reasons. But then I thought to myself, what if I was like in a parade or something using this, like compared to an internal battery that would need to be charged where you can't swap it out, or even compared to like a camera style battery, that would be a lot harder to grab hold of. This is like it seems to me like this would be the easiest thing. It's something you can grab onto. You can pop out the old one, pop in the new one, and keep going a lot more quickly than other kinds of power sources. Was that in the thinking for why to do this, or was that just a convenient side effect?
No, that was absolutely the part of the thinking. It had, because I knew that one battery, batteries fade, and you needed to have the ability to either stop and plug into a wall or conveniently parked car, or just pop a new battery in. And the batteries are small enough. The lithium batteries, these are 6 amp hour batteries, and they can get about 30 minutes of play out of a battery. And that's pretty much continuous. So if you're at a band, my friend has been using this at band practices, and he starts, I have to use a second battery at band practice. I'm like, well, yeah, you're at band practice if you're, and I know you're pipe major, so you're playing your butt off.
Yeah. Some people at band practice, maybe he'd be okay, but not that one, huh?
Yeah. But if you were doing a regular parade, that one battery could very well suffice getting you through a 1 or 1.5 mile parade, because you know how that goes. You play a set, you stop. You walk a block, you play a set, you stop. So And that was my goal. Again, I wanted to be able to enjoy parading again without, you know, without being burdened. Um, so,
I'm also
so
having fun imagining him with like one of those like Emiliano Zapata style ammo belts across his chest, just full of drill batteries.
drill
So
batteries.
yeah, just pop it out and throw in another one. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, though, there's I just found there is available. So I'm giving it 6 hour battery, 6 amp hour battery. So there's a 9 hour amp hour battery. So so more power.
Yeah, man.
More
I
power
guess
for
and
your
that's something that's only likely to get better all the time too. So
Yeah, and again, that was one of the technology advances that kind of made this possible because, you know, like I said, technology just all of a sudden went like snap, and these things just were like, okay, that's here, and now that's here, and I have that control unit. So the answer, I don't want to say it was intuitively obvious, but it became, when I assembled it kind of on my bench just for the first time, just to see if these pieces would work together, it was like, holy crap, this is going to work.
that's
So
a beautiful moment, you know, when those aha things suddenly slip together, it all clicks, kind of thing.
yeah, it was. You don't get a lot of those in your life. I
Yeah.
have to say I'm very fortunate that I've had a couple, but this one has sort of been very much the most satisfying, and and because of it, I don't sleep because I'm constantly thinking of ways to improve it.
Yeah. You enjoying retirement? Like working more than ever.
You know what? That's not a lie. I mean, I was worried about being bored. Well, solve
Yeah.
that problem.
Yeah. Problem solved. There's a part of this that I feel like is maybe it's like a generally applicable principle. I don't know. Maybe this is silly. You tell me, Bruce. But it seems to me like I've heard before, as I've run in like songwriting circles, you know, people who write music for themselves or for other people, that if you want to write a really good song, sometimes a really good strategy is to make it really specific. You know, you don't necessarily have to make the lyrics so specific that a person could hunt down the town that you're talking about in your song, right? But if you've got a really specific place, person, experience, etc. in mind, write a song about that, and it's amazing how generally applicable it will be. Whereas if you try to write a song that's so generic that you think everybody will like it, you know, then it's maybe not going to hit quite as well. And it just seems to me like not only was there a very specific person in mind, you know, for this the application of this product. There was also like it was an emotionally laden situation as well, you know. And I don't know, it swirls around my head a little bit. This like would there have been, like, first of all, you're the generalist, so where, like you say, your experiences throughout decades lined up to make it so you could tinker and figure this out. Not everybody would have been in that situation. And then the second part is there was like real emotional drive. Like there was a real reason to get this thing made. That wouldn't have experienced. Like maybe there are people in the world who would have been qualified to make this, but they wouldn't have been motivated to, you know. And so the motivation lined up with the qualification, and then it all came together. It's a lovely thing. When what is that, serendipity? Is that serendipitous?
Yeah.
Is it fate? What is it?
Kismet.
It's something.
Kismet.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was all of that involved in this, but as I said, initially it was just to try to help a good friend of mine, and that was
Yeah.
it. And of course, once this thing came together, you know, she who must be obeyed. No, my loving wife. No, seriously, just she said, Bruce, you are going to get this patented. And I'm like, oh, come on! I just wanted to solve this. Like, no. We're getting this patented. So she's been kind of driving, trying to to get this protected, the idea protected,
Mm-hmm.
and then to set this up as a business to see if others could be helped, you know, or this could serve others. And I have to say, you know, this last year, we just finished our first year officially in business. And I told her, I said, well, we're just going to do this and see if if there's even a market out there for this.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any interest at all. And there has been. I laid in enough parts and components to build a dozen of these things, and we've done that.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's a shoestring kind of thing, I guess, but
Sure.
it's totally a niche. Let's face it. This is not.
This is a niche folded inside of another niche. For sure.
Exactly. Exactly. This is the product that nobody ever wants to need.
Yep. But man, if they do, like, so happy that it's available, right?
Well, I think, yeah. Again, if you need it, it's there. And,
Yeah.
And that's important, exactly. Because otherwise, where are you? You're left on the sidelines. Period. You're left with electronic simulations, and they're good. I mean, I love Rolf Yoost's red pipe.
It's very cool. And that Blair chanter does some amazing things too.
Exactly.
I've got a Glencoe chanter here that I use for practicing when my kids and wife can't stand it any longer, and those things are for sure important, for sure.
Yeah. And when I was traveling, I had my Figerstrom with me, Technopipe with me all the time, and but they're good, and they're good, but they're not playing the bagpipe. There's that whole physicality. There's that, damn that reed moment, and hooray that reed moment, and learn tuning and all the sensibilities and all the socializations. I mean, it's a completely different thing from playing the instrument, socializing with the instrument, watching the audience respond to the instrument, versus playing, in your apartment or in your house, on electronic, even, So I really think it has value for those who value the experience.
Yes. Well, and it's like maybe because of the specific reason you were initially developing it, the first things that come to my mind is like the person who has been playing pipes, but then a medical issue or just getting old or something makes it so they can't inflate that bag anymore. This comes into play. But it also occurs to me that there are people in the world who have the situation where they can't blow up and sustain a set of bagpipes for whatever reason, whether they're born with something that makes it hard for that to happen, or if they have an accident or something, right? This makes it like it wouldn't have been an option for them. This becomes an option, So there's also seems like a good teaching tool,
Good. Great segue. Absolutely.
I know that I hear people complain all the time. There's this guy who does now suddenly he was on the show. Now suddenly my mind is blanking on the name of the Facebook group. But he does annotated bagpipe sheet music to help people who are new to piping and also new to music, to kind of help them get a feel for it. It's like color coded and it's got the names underneath the notes and stuff. And it's surprising how many of our own try to tear down an idea like that, like, oh, if you're not going to learn the right way, then don't learn at all, and it's like, do you want the art form to die? Let's break down as many barriers as we can. And this seems like another one of those tools where it's surprising, but I wouldn't be, at the same time, I'm not surprised to imagine that there are probably some people who would say, no, you got to make the kids suffer, that's the only way to learn bagpipes, It's like, what?
Yeah, if you haven't been on practice channel for a year, you're absolutely wasting everybody's time.
Yeah.
Well, put to your point, I have several students, and the transition to the pipes is often a challenge for and people learn differently, and people's aha moments come differently. So I had this one student who was struggling with bag control. Well, as it turned out, I put them on the EBelaire because first of all they kind of lost their lip in early part of the lesson, and it's like, well, what do we do now? So I throw the EBelaire on our bagpipes, and do I get in trouble for being gender specific here? Never mind. Anyway, I threw the EBelaire on there, bagpipe filled up, got them settled, solid tone, got her listening to the drones and how they blended together so that you could hear. And she's a musician, and she was like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
now what does it feel like under your arm? Because the pump is blowing it up. It's got a full feel. It's got a full. She goes, oh well, mine never feels like that. I said, I know, because you're not putting enough air in. I keep saying blow harder, not blow harder, but blow more, and you're thinking blow harder, and it's
Yes.
not that. It's this is managing your energy going into the instrument, not brute force. It's not that. But anyway, the EBelaire gave her the goal right away.
Yeah, because now she knew what it was supposed to feel like and supposed to sound like, and now she knew what she was going for, instead of like wandering in the darkness, as it were, and hoping to discover it.
Right, until one day it's like, oh, okay, that's what it was. So yeah, that really helped her. And again, that was maybe her modality. I don't want to generalize too much, but it was very effective for her. And there was I have a couple of other students who are similarly placed. They're elderly people learning the pipes, and this is giving them an opportunity to play longer and get enjoyment out of that investment of time and energy in learning.
Yeah.
Because trust me, learning a new instrument as an older person is a whole different beast. But now they're finding their success as well. So the value, is it worth the money? Yes, absolutely, it's worth the money. If you're looking to get the value of experience that perhaps you can't physically generate right now, but will grow into.
Mm-hmm.
So that's over time. So it's a great tool that way. I use it for teaching tuning, and
Sure, yeah.
And drone calibration. I throw that on the pipes, and we can then, with the manometer in the drone, to say, okay, your chanter's read right now is at 30 inches of water. Okay, I want your drones calibrated so they all shut off together at 32.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they just all snap off, and that way you're not dealing with a blaring drone that's sucking all your energy.
Yeah.
So I'll cork up the chanter stock, put the EBelaire on, pop up the pressure to 30 inches of water, and then lean on the bag, and at 32, that drone should go off.
Mm-hmm.
If not, make an adjustment. Move on to the middle drone, move on to the bass drone. And at the end, I should have a whole set of drones calibrated to pretty much shut off at the same time at about 32. And I didn't have to put my mouth on their instrument. I didn't have to I didn't contaminate them with, or get contaminated by them, because that's another consideration in these days.
Well, and they get to see it too. Like if you were putting your mouth on the instrument, it's hard for you to describe what's going on while you're doing it. And if they are blowing up the instrument, it's hard for them to pay attention while they're doing it. You kind of quiet the noise in a way, and make it so you can focus on what you really want to focus on.
And that's exactly it. It becomes a function of doing things in an orderly, systematic way, which I think Andrew Douglas is a great proponent of doing.
Yeah.
So I think this again enhances our ability to teach the instrument, and demystifying. That's a good word. Demystifying some of the more arcane parts of this art.
Which there's plenty to demystify for sure.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, because I think about probably most pipers do remember the first time that I blew up a set. It was in my teacher's basement, old loaner set there. Smelled terrible. But also just like how hard it was. And my teacher, really great teacher. She was telling me like things to focus on, and things to think about and things to improve. But honestly, I was so focused on just trying to keep stuff inflated and squoze and making noise and stuff, like I couldn't think about what she was telling me,
Yeah.
It becomes a much more just like a physical survival experience rather than a fine touch musical instrument kind of experience. And And so then, like, I don't know, it just seems like you have to persevere through that until you can get, like, your body under control before you can start, like, thinking about these finer things. And so, something like this makes it, that perseverance period is a time when maybe some people, quit. And we don't want people to quit. We need more people playing pipes. Got to keep this stuff alive.
Yeah, especially when you have people who are really good with fingering, and then they get to the pipes, and it just seems like they just fall back to the
Yeah.
sub basement.
Yep.
And they get frustrated. And I'm trying to eliminate that frustration and still provide them strong skills. Because once they get on the pipes and they're blowing, we're using manometers all the time to try to, to say, well, you saw where the EBelaire put, that's the number you want to put yourself at, and you want to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, but I can't keep it that steady. Well, yeah, you're not electronic, you don't have a battery plugged in you, so, deal with it.
Yet.
Yeah, yes. No, I ain't going there. But it's turned out to be a very, very valuable tool for me, teaching pipes. And I have a small band up here as well that, getting people who are in trouble, kind of get them out of trouble by diagnosing what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing. So I'm now using the EBelaire at the band, since we're on that one, to select reeds, chanter reeds.
Oh.
Yeah, well, COVID,
Right, yeah.
We're all real sensitive to infection these days, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
COVID or flu or whatever. And, we've how many, it was just given. If there's something wrong with somebody's reed on parade, you pulled out that chanter, you stuck it in your mouth, made an adjustment, put it back in, right?
Yep.
That was just the way it was done.
And if there's something really wrong with it, you might even lather up a bunch of spit to shove through it on purpose.
You could. It's been heard. I've heard that's been done. Yeah.
Yep.
So, no more. So what we do now is I'll take the EBelaire. I will have wipes for the it's waxed hemp. So I just wipe that down, plug it into their blowpipe stock. Do kind of a feel for where their instrument is, what reed they need.
Yeah.
And then if they're playing about, take 30 inches of water, I'll go to my supply that I've checked out in my pipes and labeled 30 inches of water and give them one of those reeds. And and they're usually already checked out, so we're good. But it effectively removes the mouth blowing from the equation. Now, of course, if they for whatever reason contaminate the reed, actually, as soon as it goes into their instrument, it's contaminated. I'll then take the reed out and bring it home in a separate container, and then sanitize it in some Everclear or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's once again, it's a tool that kind of removes variables that makes it possible for you to focus on one thing. So then you can have your reeds categorized. Like I've also gone through like a pack of new reeds and just with my mouth blown on them to try to get a feel for like. And then I lay them out in like a range of like, all right, the hardest ones are to the left and the easiest ones are to the right, and so that's how I'll hand them out. To the new players, they get the ones from the right, and the old players get the ones from the left. But that's not very precise. And especially after doing even a short little test on 12 reeds, is your 13th and 14th and 15th reed, is my perception of how hard that is going to be as accurate as my perception on the first, second, and third? Probably not, right?
Exactly. This makes this a whole lot more of a repeatable process and a lot more precise and consistent. Absolutely. I got to remember that one. That's a good one. You're right.
I'll write you a blurb, man.
All right. Authorial credit gets given. But,
what else is there anything else that comes to mind about the product itself that you'd like to share? I only ask, I don't mean to rush you in any way, just we're getting close to episode length, so if you do have other things, we can talk for a lot longer too, so just, what else?
No, that's fine. So there's a couple of things in the works. I actually have, more power. um,
More power.
yeah, I found another pump motor that I want to tinker with.
Your aspirations of power are far more like benign and pleasant than some
It's-
people's.
I know, yeah, I guess, but anyway, more pressure, more fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's that. This work on the pump itself. Um, Actually, where I'm right now is I'm making some incremental improvements on the hoses, on the connections, and the wireless control unit right now is limited to a puff. Um,
Hmm.
I'm in this year, 2023, we're going to introduce a version of it that allows you to do a sip.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's a puff or sip to get the activation. And the third thing is a bite switch for people who
Mm.
are even uncomfortable with that. So you can just do a little nip, and that's a nip on the bulb, not more commonly. Never mind.
Right, I got you.
Um,
Yeah. So
so
hey,
yeah,
if you want to keep increasing accessibility, there might be someone out there who needs that. So
yeah, yeah, a little nip with every bite.
yeah.
So it'll be a small bite switch to activate it for those who are more comfortable doing that. So there's a couple of operational improvements, and I'm also always working on That's why I want to talk to Dave about the product itself, the actual 3D printing. Aside, I didn't want once I had the design, I wanted to hand this off to be professionally produced.
Yeah, yeah.
The cases and the
Injection
plastic
molding or
component.
something, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I got.
But not that. I see.
Well, no, I no, I well the pricing. It was
It's crazy expensive. I've also looked into injection molding. It's insane what it takes to make a die.
well that, and even I went to a 3D printer.
Oh yeah.
Couple houses down here, 3D printing houses, and I got from all of them their best price that said, "Sir, we don't want to do this."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I gave them the design files broken out. Here's what I need. How many? What's the per unit cost? The per unit cost for case was more than what I'm charging for the entire design.
No way.
Oh, I swear. I actually printed it off, did paper printed in this case,
Yeah.
and just put it up in my workshop. Is let's not do this.
Man, that's got to be somebody who invested a lot of money in their 3D printer and now they're in debt and they're trying to get it back.
I don't know. I was
Because that's not
gosh,
cost of materials for sure. That's crazy.
no. So right now, I can produce the cases for pennies on the dollar,
Yeah.
versus hundreds of dollars.
So did you end up getting a printer to put in? You just got one in your shop so you can just print them yourself?
Oh yeah, I've been doing
Yeah.
that all along.
That's kind of what I was assuming. But then suddenly I thought, or did you find like like a maker lab at a local library or something? They
No,
don't
no,
usually like you to leave overnight prints though. So
no, because these prints are fairly extensive. I mean, it takes
Yeah.
me about 3 or 4 days to print all the components. I only have one printer,
Yeah.
so that's obviously scalable by multiple printers. But the it takes about a week for me right now to build a unit on order. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so excited that you're going to be putting this up, because just trying to get the word out is really the struggle right now.
Well, I'd imagine that's the thing, right? There are people who could use this. Now you got to make them aware of it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, and okay, I know we're getting to time, but
Oh, no sweat, man.
So the last thing that's kind of just come up is my friend David, I said, is being very successful with it. He's so excited. The Manchester Pipe Band has a grade 5 group, and he's looking to rejoin their competition circle.
Awesome.
Okay.
This is the bow on the story. This is the cherry on top. This is where it all ties together beautifully.
Yep. So we just need to kind of work with our local, the EUSPBA here in the East, to get some clarifications on their rulings about about using this device in a competition circle.
Yeah.
So but the point is, it's like, I've already spoken to a judge who said, "Well, Bruce, what do I do with you if you're in front of me playing this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not blowing. So what am I judging you on?" It
Yeah.
goes to the whole thing about judging. When you're playing the instrument, you're judging the total performance that includes blowing, execution, expression, presentation, steadiness, all of that, tone, intonation. So does this somehow warrant a separate class of competitor, or is this something that, I don't know, but I think we're going to be challenging the rules here shortly.
It totally makes sense. So, I can understand it from both sides, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta have as even a playing field as possible, but then you also don't want to be exclusionary either. So
Hey, there you go. So I think it's going to be. I think inadvertently, I'm going to be challenging some of those precepts that we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, and we might just end right there too. But it does just. It also occurs to me that this is the same kind of. I've heard people talk about what do you do with a piper in a wheelchair, because walking, you have these percussive incidents when you take a step that might throw off your steady blowing, and so you're compensating for that. Whereas a wheelchair can be gliding in, so is that giving them an unfair advantage as they march in if somebody's pushing them in a wheelchair? I don't know.
I don't know what competition circles you've marched into.
I was going to say that's
pretty horrible.
Well, and I was also going to say that's some pretty tight scrutiny on the march in too. Is there nothing else that could maybe just be a deciding factor? While they're playing their set, but I guess that's more just to say people will scrutinize every little thing they can for sure.
Well, and I've seen exceptions already, because I remember going to one of the championship games, and I can't remember the name of the band, but it was an upper level band. The bass drummer needed to have his drum brought onto the field.
Back problems or something.
Whatever, I don't know what it was, but he had to have it put on a stand in the circle so he could play, and that was kind of, I'd never seen that before, but hey, I think accommodation is going to be and openness is going to be the watchword going forward here. I don't want to exclude anybody, especially somebody who's done the work to play, to learn the sets, to do everything else. It seems a little bit unfair to exclude them because they've overcome their disability.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. And I don't know, have you followed this the radio program Pipeline that the BBC has probably taken off the air?
Yes, I don't catch it every week.
Yeah, I don't catch it every week either, but I did see a piece that what's his name? Is it Gary West? Is that the host's name? He'd written where he's just was talking about being worried about the longevity of the art form, that kind of thing. And people can, there's more to piping than just competition, of course. There are other kinds of bagpipes, other styles of play, all kinds of stuff, but it does seem to me in general, any attitude that keeps people out doesn't serve the longevity of the art form. It's every barrier you can remove is good, because if it lets more people in, that's gonna keep it going for longer. That's more students that become teachers. It has residual effects. Whereas if there's a barrier that keeps people out, that's one fewer person that would have maybe innovated. Maybe would have taught a lot of people. Maybe would have started a new band. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and everything you've said so far pretty much applies to the world of the Great Highland Bagpipe, because if you want to think about it, bagpipes go back, how far? Really in time. And you got to imagine the first guy who came up with a tied-in stock, in Scotland. That was a huge technological innovation. Bellows, adding bellows and creating an indoor pipe to an arm-driven bellows was another massive step step into a new direction.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, the next best invention was artificial reeds and zippers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I love zippers. I'm a major fan of zippers.
Anybody who's lost a drone reed in their bag is a pretty quick believer in the zipper.
Well, my mother thanked heavens when I came in with an artificial bag, and she was elderly at that point, because she said, "Oh, thank God you're not going to be blowing Robertson seizing up into the ceiling anymore."
Oh.
Because I would heat the can over the gas burner, because
Yeah.
I can do that. I can just warm it and it won't go pop. Shoot. But yeah. I think we have to be open to innovation, and I think within our world of the highland bagpipe, we're going to be challenging some of the set thinking, and we're going to have to kind of force everybody to be a little bit more open, and whether that means a new category or that means just a doctor's note that says you need to do this accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see where this all lands, but right now, for now, I'm just very happy to have been able to be part of getting at least one man and a small group of people who have bought the product back up and playing their pipes again.
Yeah.